Everyone. How are you? I'm posting this video on the Star Family Wisdom channel that was posted on the Supernatural Souls channel because it feels like some interesting galactic level transmission and sharing that might be interesting to this community. It also provides context about a 2.5 year engagement with a yoga lineage that you've heard me talk about if you've been following along. That engagement is now complete. That engagement was part of a larger galactic mission that I have been participating in on Earth to identify the karmic threads from ancient times that are still existing in certain lineages or matrices on Earth. And this particular lineage formed a very, very powerful and at times distorted energetic matrix that stems from the times of Atlantis. So I've engaged a 2.5 year yogic process, vision quest, shamanic process to access my full consciousness, to be able to see the karmas in this lineage, to be able to understand what was going on a deeper level and how the karmas in this lineage both tie to the larger Earth matrix distortions that have been in place since the time of Atlantis. And through my process of engaging this whole host of negative patterns and distorted ways of engaging spiritual power, through that process, I have been feeding back to the galactic teams and to the Mother of Creation herself what I've been finding, what I've been uncovering, what I've been integrating. And this has been a process of both recognizing my relationship with the person named Kaleshwar, who was the master of this lineage, who a lot of souls think of as their master, to better understand what my relationship with him was and why I found myself connected to him in this lifetime and what that path of service really meant for me. So this is an interesting lesson about Pleiadian karma on Earth. This is an interesting lesson about Atlantean karma and how that has played out throughout time, where it is still present on the planet in various expressions. And this is an interesting reveal about Kaleshwar's karma specifically. If you've ever had any interest in ancient Egypt, this is a Horus painting behind me that happened a few months ago. If you're at all interested in ancient Egypt and its ties to Atlantis, the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses and those beings that we know of through Egyptian mythology and what their ties were to Atlantis and what that whole time period really looked like, I go into that in a little bit of detail in this video. And I'm excited to share more about what I've uncovered and what I'm continuing to remember in future videos. I think that will be a fun way to continue communing with all of you in the Star Family Wisdom community and those who are finding this channel. But for now, this gives context about a very intense 2.5 year process that I've just completed that is in service to planet Earth and in service to our remembering and in service to the dissolution of negative matrices, negative energetic and consciousness matrices on Earth, so that we may move forward in a more beautiful way. So enjoy this video. It is a culminating moment from my journey with Kaleshwar, this very powerful being who found himself incarnated in India in his last lifetime. And this is the culmination of that 2.5 year journey that took me to India, that took me through a lot of different aspects of Earth history and activating my source consciousness so that I could see the deeper layers and hold that karma with love and move through the karmic reconciliation processes in the most appropriate way in service to this galaxy and service to this planet. So I offer this today for that larger context about my journey and about what I have been engaging with that karmic lineage that is a yoga lineage in modern day times, and a little context about what led me to where I'm at now. So I shared this on the Supernatural Souls channel, which is a channel that was developed specifically for that yoga lineage as I was engaging it. So I shared this with that channel for souls who may find it helpful, for souls who may need this extra context to be able to go into deeper levels of shadow work. So I wanted to offer it here because I think it's also just an interesting galactic and Earth history lesson. So enjoy, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now. Hi everyone, Jenna here. If you watched the last video or the last couple of videos, you might have seen me in Kali mode. I'm out of Kali mode now and back into my normal personality a bit more. So I thought we would do a short talk about some of the things I mentioned in the previous videos to maybe broaden the context a little bit and to share just a little bit more about my process and why it was important and why I have shared so much in the way that I have. So once upon a time on planet Earth, there was a civilization called Lemuria, and there was a civilization called Atlantis. These civilizations were born from a galactic mission to come to Earth from the Pleiades, to seed the Earth with Pleiadian knowledge, wisdom, and beings, to intermingle with the species and beings who already existed on Earth. When that mission occurred and the Pleiadian teams were trapped on Earth, they could not return home, they carried with them some power objects, some highly magical types of objects that respond to Edenic grids, Edenic patterning. And by Edenic, I mean heaven on earth patterning, energetic structures that are in alignment with the mother's truth, intelligence, full source intelligence, full harmony, balance, truth, trust, joy, divine love, creativity, abundance, beauty. When these beings from the Pleiades landed on Earth, it was a very harsh environment for them to adjust to. The Earth matrix had already been shifted to a binary matrix, a duality polarization type of matrix to support the Earth's ascension process. A long, long time ago, the Earth operated in a tri-wave matrix, which is more in alignment with the true universal mother matrix of ease, grace, and flow. When the Earth signaled her desire for true ascension into a higher dimension, the binary matrix was installed to support that ascension. That then allows more negativity to flourish. That then allows conflict between the dark and light to ensue. That then allows for polarization, which we have experienced throughout time. When the Pleiadian team landed on Earth, this was a new environment for them, and they were not familiar with this environment. They had not trained adequately for this environment. Some of the teams faltered. Some of the teams were not successful in their ability to work with the Earth matrix in a highly harmonious way as stewards of life. One of those teams became the Lemuria civilization that we are familiar with. One of those teams became the Atlantis civilization that we are familiar with. The other team, that was a surviving team, became the civilization of Avalon that we are familiar with. 3 different civilizations, 3 different approaches, 3 different entries into the Earth matrix. The Atlantis-based civilization that stemmed from this Pleiadian team because of some of the shock and trauma of finding themselves in the Earth matrix under different and dense conditions than they were used to. Some of those beings did not maintain their higher nature, and some of those beings sought to control beings who were already on the earth. Some of the original humanoid beings. The Atlantis team used their power objects to subjugate the population that they found themselves near. They took that population as slaves. They then built their kingdom of Atlantis. They used their spiritual knowledge and their understanding of the mechanics of existence to let that civilization flourish to the best of their ability. Yet, as that civilization progressed, I think most of us are familiar with some of the overarching narrative of it, that some of the ways spiritual power began to be utilized became quite dark and became manipulative and became an abuse of power and abuse of creation. During this time, when Avalon was thriving, when Lemuria was thriving, when Atlantis was still in its earlier stages before some of the darker misuse of power truly began, there were a lot of star races on Earth. This was a time of interspecies mingling. This was a time of shared knowledge. This was a time when a lot of the temple centers that we are familiar with, like in Egypt, came alive, and a time in which many humans were learning from the star races. The star races held high wisdom of creation and imparted to humans that wisdom and filled in some gaps that maybe the Atlantis civilization had around some of those mechanics of existence. Some might be familiar with the historic Egyptian narrative of Isis, Osiris, Isis's sister Nephthys, and the drama that ensued to create the being Anubis. Some of these dramas, as they are told in modern history, are not 100% accurate. However, the narrative of those dramas lives within the collective consciousness of humans. I'm going to share a very brief detail about some of the true history here for the good of all, for broadening our understanding about the Kaleshwar matrix. When the star beings came to Earth, especially the Syrian team of star beings, that team consisted of Isis, Osiris, Nephthys, Set. We might be familiar with the idea that Set was the dark brother, and in the historical narrative was the one who dismembered Osiris. The true history is that Set was the star being who gave Atlantis a lot of their wisdom that they misused. And Set encouraged some of the hybridization of beings, which was a violation of free will, a violation of stewardship of creation, and because of his level of power, influenced that civilization in a way that led to its destruction. Set and Nephthys were counterparts, were divine cohorts. Nephthys being the more shadow embodied sister of Isis. Set and Nephthys produced the being known as Anubis through their divine union. And it was the being Anubis who enacted some of the more egregious misuse of creation activities with Atlantis. Kaleshwar was Set. And unfortunately, his wisdom and the use of that wisdom in ways that were out of alignment with the higher order and intent to support stewardship of Earth resulted in the significant abuse of power in Atlantis that led to the last reset of Earth. And this is not the easiest thing for me to talk about. Because I do love Kaleshwar. And I do love the beings, the Pleiadian team who came to Earth, all of them. And yet that mission did not go so well in all areas of Earth. And when the star races interact with humans, we have to be highly careful of how we engage power, how we teach about that, and how we share about the mechanics of existence. Set has not always been that careful. He has been on a path of learning about that through Earth incarnations as a human, because he was part of the karma that led to the last reset. So ever since then, he has been reincarnating, as have been many star beings and advanced souls who were part of that time, who held power in that time, to correct the Earth matrix, to support its ascension, to shift and transform out of those patterns of abuse of power and misuse of creation, to arrive back at a more heavenly, Edenic way of operating, where we are truly stewards of life, and any power we hold is simply the mother's power, and we steward that with the utmost care, the utmost integrity, the utmost truth and love. Because of the shadow patterns that began in Atlantis, the complexity of those patterns that have played out throughout time to modern day now have been quite complex, have been difficult to see. The level of forgetfulness that has happened for humans has been quite extraordinary. And it's been difficult for humans to see these karmas. So I share this now with the utmost sincerity, as truth, as missing context, because this is context that people need to be able to fully understand the arc of history, to be able to fully understand the arc of karma on this planet that has played out throughout time. and how those threads of karma, how those threads of patterning show up in spiritual lineages like the Kaleshwar lineage. His mission in his last incarnation was to teach about Jesus. Kaleshwar was also John. Kaleshwar stood by Jesus' side to learn, to engage some of those negative patterns that had ensued from Atlantis that were still present in Israel. And his mission was simple. It was to teach more of the truth about Jesus. It was to reveal insight around miracle mechanics, but in pure alignment with the mother, and that did not always happen. Because of his patterning, because of the karma he carries from ancient times, tendencies around manipulation, showing off power, subjugating students inadvertently in unconscious ways occurred. It may be quite difficult to think of a being like him with his level of power and what he demonstrated. It may be quite difficult to think of him in this way, especially when we have felt love with him, especially when we have seen him healing people. It's hard to hold both. It can be hard to hold both. But this is the full perspective. So he's been on a learning path. He's been on a learning path about how to hold his power and magic and what is truly the mother's miracle mechanics with integrity and love without playing the games that have been played in the past. Some of those games snuck into his lineage on Earth in his last incarnation. When I started waking up and finding the lineage, I was being activated for a galactic mission. I was being activated to be able to see these karmas, to be able to work with them and integrate them effectively, to be able to identify all of the patterning in this lineage that stems from ancient times, to gain my level of psychic sight and ability in integrity to be able to do that. The reason souls have felt like Kaleshwar is their master is because in some ways in the past he was, but because there was a very significant power difference between him and humans. There's a very significant power difference. That also makes it easy for subjugation to happen, again, sometimes unconsciously and sometimes through these entanglements and patterns of past karma. Set had his own lineage back in the Atlantis days. Each star race group had their own followings. Humans followed these beings, as they do still today in various ways. Again, Jesus was an advanced soul from the stars, from the advanced civilizations that have been supporting Earth for a very long time. When humans are in their cycles of forgetfulness, when this occurred in a more extreme way after the fall of Atlantis, Lemuria, and Avalon, it became impossible for the star races to retain direct communication and communion physically with humans. That's when the first pharaohs were installed. You might remember in history around 3500 BC is when the first human pharaoh was on the scene. Because before that, it was the star races. Before that, the star races were leading Egypt and these other temple centers that existed, like in India. And the star races were leading humans through the initiation schools and supporting their understanding of cosmic universal harmony and cosmic mechanics. So around 3500 BC, humans were left on their own again. The star races were with humans after the fall of Atlantis to support the recovery, to support the restoration in ways that could occur. And then because Earth was entering its descent into the darker yugas and the forgetfulness was going to ensue, separation and conflict in some ways was already starting to ensue again in the civilizations that were born after the fall. The star races left humans to be on their own. And ever since then, advanced beings have been incarnating in human form to hold high creator codes, to lead humans through times of darkness, to support the evolution out of those past negative patterns. When I first started seeing these karmas, it brought me a lot of grief. And you might be feeling that now too. And that's okay. It's okay. It's hard to see. The level of negative pattern complexity on Earth and the historic events that have led to that has not been totally clear to humans. So I offer this purely as a gift and a transmission of truth to fill in some of the missing context. To say that even though some of those events happened in Atlantis, even though beings ended up seeking power and control and wanting to use spiritual technologies for the purpose of enacting their own will and playing with creation in ways that affect life negatively, even though that occurred, the beings who have been part of that historically have also been on a healing arc, have been on a journey of healing and learning about the mother. Kaleshwar's lineage in this lifetime brought some of those beings into that awareness more fully, even though I have talked about some of the distortion related to how Kaleshwar has presented practices, processes, spiritual technologies related to the mother and how to engage those. He did bring awareness around the mother. He did bring awareness around some of the miracle mechanics, even though some of those have been forced at times. He helped a group of people who have had difficult karma from Atlantis move forward, yet some of those Atlantean patterns were still present. And so I offer forgiveness and love and also accountability, because these patterns have been significant and they have badly distorted the Earth matrix throughout time. The current civilization's conflicts and troubles and distortions, negative patterns, are a result of what happened back in Atlantis. And so those who have been directly responsible for Atlantis and its demise and the conquering of Lemuria and Avalon through those power distortions, those beings found themselves with Kaleshwar. Not everyone in this lineage has negative karma from Atlantis, but this lineage represents the polarity of dark and light. It represents the drama that has played out between the dark and light throughout time, even if that hasn't been apparent on the surface. Illusions are tricky. They're hard to see through when you are deeply entangled in those negative patterns from the past. When there's a lot of shadow you have not been able to see and excavate. And sometimes we follow certain beings and authority figures and leaders because we have entanglements with them. Sometimes it's not the highest relationship that it could be. And that can be difficult to understand. That can be difficult to integrate, especially when we feel that very big connection initially, and we feel all of that love, and we are allured, by these extraordinary things that can happen. Without the larger context and without the context of other teachings and other lineages, we fall into the patterns of abusing power or just seeking power and not understanding why. So the power we hold should be our authentic, aligned soul power that we access and integrate by meeting ourselves, by finding our past lives, by understanding who we are as a soul and integrating that. That's how we gain power. Any other type of power acquisition is false power acquisition. Cities come online through our relationship to the mother, through our relationship directly to the mother. Cities don't come online by doing mantras over and over and over. Cities come online through our repeated demonstration of integrity. Cities come online through our repeated devotion to truth. And to freedom, and to the betterment of all and stewardship of life, and caring more about life itself than power, caring more about life itself than a fleeting glimpse of the mother. So Kaleshwar taught some things that sent people down a path of seeking something that is not always an authentic expression of the mother. And we are always in communion with the mother. She is always present, everywhere. We don't have to try to pull her into a darshan. We don't have to try to make something manifest through some mechanical, scientific mantra process. So part of my work and process has been to remember the star race karma on Earth, to excavate that, to understand my role in it as well, to understand where and how that drama between the dark and the light has unfolded over time, to better understand some of the incorrect, mythologized aspects of these lineages, to better understand the specific karmas of all in this lineage, or at least the major players in this lineage, knowing that I have seen all of the karmas of the teachers and Kaleshwar. And so I don't share about everyone in detail because that's not appropriate or necessary, but I share about Kaleshwar's in case it's helpful, in case it brings context that helps the missing pieces of that shadow work puzzle come together for someone. Because it did for me, by being able to see that, and by moving through the grief and the anger and the moments of disbelief about the incredible dramas that have played out on Earth and how they still show up in various ways. There's a lot of emotion that comes through that process of meeting the shadow and integrating it, and it's safe to feel, it's safe to feel all of the conflicting feelings we feel about that. We can still love someone and be angry at them. We can still be in awe of someone's capabilities and still be critical of them. We can recognize where a being has done great good, but we can also recognize where that was countered by a lot of distortion. This is the paradox we learn to hold. This is part of the mastery paradox we learn to hold. And if you're part of the Kaleshwar lineage and you happen to find this, this is also part of the work of coming into that full holding of the dark and light, the death and birth, to understand the larger context at play. We can't hold the universe in our consciousness if we can't even hold the Earth matrix history in our consciousness. We can't hold the universe and the mother in our consciousness if we can't hold the star races in our consciousness. So we have to do that work to zoom out. We have to expand. We have to hold more in our consciousness for that integration to occur and for our souls to fully come back into wholeness and to feel the completion of these cycles. Because part of that experience of wholeness and completion that we can feel is the very real emotional, spiritual completion of a grand cycle, these grand cycles of time that play out. So that's partially what I've been doing in my process, is a completion process. It's a process to see all of my Earth past lives, my galactic past lives, to understand where those have intersected on Earth, where I have held certain divine avatar roles on Earth, where I have interacted with Kaleshwar throughout time in various ways, where I have contributed to negative outcomes in the Earth matrix, and where I have contributed to beautiful outcomes in the Earth matrix. To be able to own all of that and to take accountability, for my part. And, not all beings do that in every lifetime. Kaleshwar did not fully do that. So he's going to get another go at it. He's already getting another chance at that. And that's beautiful. That's a good thing for him. And until we can see all of our karmas and integrate them, we're going to keep coming back. We're going to keep playing out lives on the wheel of karma until we do that work, until we see it. So this process that I have been guided on through my awakening journey, through my consciousness integration and reclamation journey, has been a process of reclamation and reclaiming some of the spiritual technologies from the past that were misused, reclaiming true history, which I'm excited to continue exploring in the future and sharing about. I have a couple of books in mind that might come forth, and to better understand, where did that wisdom and those power objects and power itself from Atlantis, where did that end up on Earth? Where is it in the Earth matrix today? So my process has been a bit of a treasure hunt. It's been a treasure hunt in a lot of ways. It's been a multi-year vision quest. And in light of the last video, I should also share, as part of my truth and just larger context around my process, when I accessed the Kaleshwar matrix, when I first found it and started working with it, when I was still a bit unconscious about what was going on there, my flow of abundance shut off. I have not received or made much money in 2.5 years since I've been engaging this matrix. So everything I said in the last video about the abundance problems of this matrix and lineage and the ways in which distortion blocks that full flow of abundance is very true, because I have experienced that, but I've been very consciously aware of what's been going on the whole time. And so my process, I was asked, by the mother to follow this process. My flow of abundance and my return to a truly harmonious, abundant life would not occur until I finished my work with Kaleshwar and with this matrix, and until I had been fully led through this vision quest, this treasure hunt, to find all of these threads of karma and patterns in the Earth matrix and that tie to this lineage also, and to better understand the shift that needed to occur for the larger Earth matrix from what had been a Kaleshwar influenced matrix to now what will be a Sophia Christ influenced matrix. That's been a long-term mission. That's been a very long-term mission. That mission has been in motion for thousands of years. Jesus was an emissary of that mission to share about that, to talk about the kingdom that was coming. But he couldn't say it was going to be 2,000 years later. People needed hope right then. People needed to have true faith that there was something better, that there was a different way, that the light would truly return. So the light's returning now through many souls, through so many volunteer souls and starseeds and humans who are awakening to that true Christ light, who are awakening to that true state of grace that is the mother. Because most of what Kaleshwar demonstrated, aside from some of the healings, that wasn't true grace. That was forced mechanics. That was scientific formulas that he was able to implement very easily in his consciousness through his field. Some of us can do that, but should we? Should we? Or should we be letting creation unfold? Should we be in a relationship with the mother and the universe? Should we be in this beautiful reciprocal dance of life that allows beauty and miracles to flow freely without force? Because they do flow freely. That is the mother's grace and generosity. When we remember that, and when we do the work to free ourselves from the shadow patterns of control and seeking power and subjugating others. So this is the true history. And this is big history to integrate. It's powerful history to integrate. you guys are the first I'm talking to about this. I'll probably share in more detail about this on the Star Family Wisdom channel at some point, but I thought maybe sharing a short talk on this might be appropriate and helpful right now on this channel for anyone who's been following along this whole time, for anyone who does come here in the future, and for anyone who's brave enough to really dive all the way into that shadow and ask the questions about, okay, well, what was my role? Where did I play a role back then? Again, not all of that's, purely negative, but in some cases, some of you were part of the Set lineage and followed him then and learned from him. But he had a lot of influence over you because he was really powerful. And that's kind of hard to escape, when someone's that powerful. In some cases, some of you were from Lemuria, some of you were from Avalon, and you lost your beautiful, heavenly, Edenic, harmonious civilizations because of Atlantis. And so there's conflict between Atlantis and those civilizations playing out through this experience of being in the lineage. In some cases, that looks like followers of Jesus in this lineage learning from someone who had not fully embodied, the level of Christ consciousness that Jesus had. In some cases, some of the Pharisee groups and Roman groups have been part of this lineage. Not all of Jesus's disciples are part of this lineage. Some of them are out there in the world doing really good things. So there's a really big mix, there's a really big mix of souls and karmas in this lineage. And again, it represents that full spectrum of that conflict that has played out throughout history between the dark and the light. And because of the patterns that ensued from Atlantis, when certain beings like Jesus showed up carrying pure light, that was highly triggering for a lot of the population. That was highly triggering to see a being being able to hold that kind of power, but to have that belief system clash with the other belief systems. So there's also been a condition in the human consciousness that has resulted in some violence and aggression and at worst, persecution towards the light. And so that's also something, we're healing from. We are recognizing now that stems all the way back from Atlantis, and these patterns have played out throughout time, and we're bringing them to a close soon. I'm feeling a little solemn after sharing all of that. It's a big share. And the journey on earth can feel really hard sometimes. I have carried so many negative patterns and shadow patterns in this lifetime that I have transmuted through these processes, not just this Kaleshwar one, but it's a lot. It can be a lot. I know. I have compassion. I have empathy because I have experienced it. I have felt it. Every single karma all of you have carried or do carry, I have felt and I have experienced in my system, so that I could move through this process in a way that was fully aligned with the mother, in a way that supported the clearing of star race karmas, in a way that allowed me to be able to hold it all with love, while also embodying the mother's truth and power and expression when the time came, to allow for karmic accountability and justice. So that's what's been happening with my process. And I want to offer this as another gift, as deeper insight and context that to some might seem just unbelievable. And I understand that. And this is part of the awakening process to face, the things that at first seem a little unbelievable, or to stay in a place of openness and beginner's mind as we integrate more consciousness. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more to explore. There's a lot more to integrate. There's a lot more to remember. And my sincere wish and desire and intention is that that's what this video supports, is that it supports collective remembering, and that it supports collective integration in a way that's a little healthier going forward, and helps with collective discernment around which wisdom and practices and approaches to take and which ones to leave, and to allow that evolution to occur, because evolution's a really good thing. We're here to evolve. We're here to grow beyond some of our past patterns and experiences. So I love you all. I hold so much love for the history of Earth and its complexity and the difficulties that have occurred. I hold so much compassion for humanity and the challenges of going through the flood, and the challenges of rising through eras of darkness, to reach where we are now, to have a chance at a different future, to have a chance at joining the galactic family soon. So part of my process was also awakening the mother, awakening the dark mother, awakening the aspects of the mother who have been disconnected from Earth at times, and to give her full access to that full picture and spectrum through my consciousness process, so that the right planetary mechanics could unfold, the right planetary matrix corrections could unfold going forward for the good of all. So with that being said, I love you. I love Kaleshwar. I hold highest intentions for his highest path forward of integrating a more grace-based leadership approach. And I hold intentions for everyone's healing through this, and for our awareness to expand, not from a place of separation, but from a place of being able to offer forgiveness and love, and to see the bigger picture, so that we can understand. Because when we can understand why things are the way they are, then we can do the deeper work. Then we can grieve. Then we can release. Then we can forgive. Then we can come back into a state of loving communion. But when we have confusion, or there's missing pieces of the puzzle, it can be hard to do that full process. So I offer this to support that, and to support everyone who's been on this journey following along with me. And I'm excited to continue sharing more galactic level transmissions on the Star Family Wisdom channel. As time goes on, I'm having some fun shifting gears into more of my galactic level awareness. And so I anticipate that some more fun sharing, more fun than this, actual fun sharing will occur there, and some fun supportive spiritual practices that I've been reconnecting with from ancient priestess times. So follow that channel if this has been helpful. This channel probably will not get much airtime going forward, but Star Family Wisdom will be the hub for all things New Earth and bringing heaven to earth and welcoming the star races to earth and coming into our source consciousness and reintegrating our soul parts and all that fun stuff that we can do. I love you. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking this in with love and openness. I'm wishing you all the best.